Good evening and welcome. I'm Joe Kelleher. Welcome to Schenectady Online with Joe Kelleher. This is our very first show and we appreciate you being here. If you're watching online, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to have you here with us, and thank you for inviting us into your home and onto your computers or wherever you might be watching us from. We've got a lot to talk about tonight. There's a lot happening in the city of Schenectady and the surrounding area. We've got some special guests here this evening, including Jim Fischer, who's running for U.S. Congress. He's going to be talking with us in just a little bit about his campaign and what's happening. We're going to talk about the city budget and what's happening with the city of Schenectady, what's happening with the budget, where they're at right now. There's a lot of other things happening, but one of the big things I want to talk about right now is we have some reports of a tornado touchdown that's already taken out a house in Delancey. So we have a tornado watch that's in effect until 8 o'clock this evening, severe thunderstorms that is. The tornado watch is in effect until 4:15, so it should be just a little while here. Be very careful, and if you're in a place where you don't feel it's safe, by all means, take care of yourself, take care of your loved ones, protect yourself, and don't put yourself in harm's way in any way, shape, or form. We want to make sure that you're safe, not only to come back and see us again, but we don't want anything to happen to you. Out on the roads, we've got lots of information on traffic accidents, rollover incidents on I-80 between the Cobblescale area and the Schenectady area, so be very careful if you're heading out on the roads as well. We're going to go right in and talk to you about me first and tell you where I come from and my background. I do have a background in broadcasting, as I was a traffic reporter for WFMZ TV in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Did a lot of radio and television down over that way, mainly for the traffic reports, but also did weather forecasts all over the country for the Radio Forecast Network, and got me a lot of experience. I'm also running for Schenectady City Council, but we're going to kind of keep that out of the subject here tonight and focus on the main issues in the city of Schenectady and get you prepared as a resident or someone who knows someone in the city of Schenectady to be ready to go to City Council and speak up there on your behalf. If you want information spoken about, you by all means, you make sure you get down there to City Council. Now, the City Council meetings are held on the very first and third Mondays of every month. Is that right? First and third Mondays of the month, right? And then the second and fourth are the council committee meetings. So, am I getting that right? Is that? It's right. The holiday is next week, so right after Memorial Day. Memorial Day is because of Memorial Day on Monday. They're having the City Council meeting on Wednesdays, and they happen at 7 o'clock in the evening. For more information on those, you can go out to the City Council's website at thecityofschenectady.com and you can do a search for them on any of your major search engines and bring up that information. One of the big things that's happening right now in the city of Schenectady is, and you're going to see this, two things actually. Number one is the budget. Now, right now on the budget, and we're going to get into this in just a little bit, is we need to discuss about last year, there reportedly having been the previous year in 2012, a surplus of $3 million. What we discovered after doing some research in that and in my campaign last year is I discovered that some money was shifted from the water and sewer fund into the general fund to make it appear as though there was a surplus. Now, in the latest city budget from last year, what we see in the audit is that they're saying that the city is still in the black by $1.4 million, and this is what was reported by the Daily Gazette. And you can certainly find out this information for yourself, and we encourage you to do so, because you being informed, this is your money, Schenectady. All of your money, it's my money too as a city resident as well, and I want to know where it goes and make sure it's being spent properly. But before we go too further into that, I want to introduce my very first guest on the show ever, because this is our first show online. I met this gentleman at the Lincoln Day dinner, this past Lincoln's birthday here in 2014. And he got up to the podium and talked about his run for Congress, and it was amazing what he said. Now, he's running in the 20th district against Paul Tonko, and I want you to introduce you to him and learn about what he's for. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce my new friend, Mr. Jim Fischer. Jim, pleasure to meet you. Thanks
Thank
and
you,
welcome.
Joe.
We
Thanks.
appreciate you being here.
Thanks so much for having me here.
So-
on your maiden show.
Our very first show,
Yeah.
and it's incredible to have you here. And as I mentioned, we had you here. Actually, I met you at Glenn Sanders' mansion,
Right.
and really a lot of great information there. They talked about the SAFE Act. They talked about all the different candidates. Now that we learn about George Amador, who's running again, but we want to focus on Jim Fischer and find out what Jim Fischer is for. Tell us about that.
Well, Joe, you're talking about my platform, or what I'm saying I'm for, and it's a little bit of a play on words to help people remember what I am for. A lot of times, I am the Republican candidate, and a lot of times the Republican Party is seen as the party that of no, and we're known more for what we're against than what we're for. And what I'm telling people I'm for, FOR, stands for freedom, opportunity, and responsibility. And it really boils down to those three fundamental principles that America was founded upon, and that I would argue are being undermined by the big government agenda that we see being rolled out over the last 5.5 years with President Obama, Nancy Pelosi, and Paul Tonko in Congress. So I stand for freedom, which is our constitutional liberties, upholding and protecting our constitutional liberties, which especially here in New York State we see being undermined. A lot of people very upset with Governor Cuomo's SAFE Act. A lot of people very passionate about that. It's a faulty law, in my opinion.
A lot of people are calling it the Unsafe Act, if I'm not mistaken.
And
right?
it really is going to have no effect on gun violence. It's just taken 6 million legally law-abiding citizens who happen to own guns in New York State and turn them into criminals if they have a gun that has certain features. And so it'll do nothing to help us, but it does undermine our constitutional freedoms. It's things like that we see happening. And also economic opportunity. I come from an economics background, and in this particular economy we have right now, we're growing at 2.5%. And in this point in an economic recovery, we should be growing at 4, 5, 6%.
Wow.
If we were, we'd have much more robust job growth and a stronger economy, obviously, and not as many people on unemployment and government assistance. So that's the economic aspect, or the opportunity aspect, and then responsibility. We can get into that in a little bit too.
And I'm glad you mentioned that about opportunity, because one of the things that I've seen personally, and I've talked to a lot of other folks about, is the job growth here in the city, and not only in the city of Schenectady, but Schenectady County and a lot in upstate New York over here. I was just listening to a radio program on the way to the studio, and they discussed that about opportunities for people to come into the state, where just in the past year alone, 3.5 million people have left the state. So that only allows for higher taxes here, because it needs more of the current taxpayers that are staying in the state to pay that deficit.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, well, I don't know that 3.5 million is correct, because that would be a pretty significant portion of our population. I had heard numbers of like 400,000 people have left the state in the last few years. Okay. It's significant nonetheless.
Yes.
And, that's obviously hurting our economy. And the reason people are leaving is because New York State is one of the highest taxed and most regulated economies. States in the country, and that's why we're ranked so low. And that's what Rob Astorino, who's running for governor, is talking about. Is New York winning or losing? And in so many metrics, we can say New York State is losing. And that's why I would argue that we need to have Rob Astorino be our next governor, so we can start turning that around. And what we have going on, of course, I'm running for a federal position, so see the same type of dynamics happening on a national issue. When you tax and overregulate and put more and more government on top of our businesses and individuals and entrepreneurs, the only thing it's going to do is slow growth and restrain economic activity. So if you don't like what you see going on in New York State right now, then don't continue to elect people such as we have in Congress representing us right now, who want to continue to grow our government. We need less government. If we could take some government off of the backs of our economy and our businesses, we would see real economic growth, which would create real hope for American people, not this false hope of government dependency.
Now, so basically what you're saying is, as Albert Einstein said, the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results.
Yes.
And that's compared to other states, like some of the states that we've seen in the South, where they've had smaller governments come in and create more opportunities. Do you see a chance for New York to move in that direction under Rob Astorino?
Oh, absolutely. There's no reason why New York can't be winning. New York is, I still think the greatest state in the nation. I grew up here. I grew up not far from here off of Upper Union Street in Schenectady, and have lived most of my life here. I love New York State. But what really concerns me, and what concerns so many people, like myself who have teenage children or children who are about ready to go off to college, is they wonder, will our kids be able to come back home after college, or will they need to move out of the state to be able to find good paying jobs? So, New York State can be turned around if we implement the right types of policies that encourage businesses to locate here. The government has a Startup New York program. I would argue that it's really nothing more than a PR campaign to help him get reelected. People who have businesses here are very upset by it because it favors businesses to come in rather than businesses that are already here. We should be helping businesses to come in, certainly, but also those businesses that are already located here to expand, encourage them to do that, not make it so difficult for businesses that are here. That's why so many people are moving out of state, and so many businesses are either moving out or not expanding the way they might if we had less regulations here in the state.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I was actually talking to Pete Vroman from the undersheriff from Montgomery County, and he and I were talking just about that, where we've seen Governor Cuomo and the CSEA very upset with him, and along with other unions, very upset with him for who are these people coming in from out of state, and they don't have to be pay any taxes, income taxes, for 10 years.
Right.
And then for these people who've been giving their blood, sweat, and tears to the state for decades, some of them, and still have to pay.
Right.
They feel like it's a slap in the face, and rightfully so.
It is, absolutely. I mean, who wouldn't feel that way? Now, I happen to operate a small business. This would not affect me so much, but I can only imagine that if a major competitor, national competitor of mine, were encouraged to come into town and open up business right next door to me, and they got all kinds of tax breaks that I'm not getting, obviously that's going to put me at a competitive advantage. So that's what people are upset about. So these are the kind of things, these are some of the reasons that New York is losing. And if we don't want America to lose the way New York is losing, we need to change our leadership. We need to change directions. As you said, I didn't know it was Albert Einstein who coined that phrase. And I've certainly never been compared with Albert Einstein, so I wouldn't start now. But that isn't a very appropriate thing to be saying. If we continue to elect the same entrenched career politicians time and time again, then we really have no one to blame but ourselves for the policies that we end up with.
And let's take that on a more local level, Jim, and talk about things here in the Schenectady area. We've seen it happen on both sides of the aisle. Okay, because I'm not gonna focus on any one particular party, but we see that so often that when a particular party remains in control for so long, they tend to get a little bit complacent.
Absolutely.
And they feel like that's where they belong and they're in charge, and there's not a proper representation of all the constituents on either side of the aisle. So what can people in the Schenectady area do to make sure that these modifications get changed and get taken care of?
They can hire new leaders like Joe Kelleher and Jim Fischer. That would be a good start, don't you think?
I like the way he thinks.
Right. No, you're absolutely right, and I agree that it's not just one party or the other. They say power corrupts and ultimate power corrupts ultimately, and if you have one party in control for a long time, things tend to get a little messy after a while, and we see that happening. I think we certainly see it happening in New York State, in the Assembly in particular. And that's why you mentioned Pete Vroman, who would make a great assemblyman. Pete's a super guy, a real public servant. So I'll put in a plug for him as well. But, I don't just say that the Republicans have all the answers and Democrats are, all in the wrong. One of the things I really want to offer the people of the 20th Congressional District is a strong independent voice who will talk across the aisle to members of both parties to come up with solutions that work for people. We need good paying jobs. People need to get back to work. We all know too many people who are out of work and really struggling. And, that word hope comes back up because that's what people still are looking for. It's like, we need hope. And the real hope of America has always been based upon freedom and opportunity, going back to those points. And, the responsibility end, just to follow up on that, is, I happen to be someone who believes in a proper role for government. And we have a responsibility to care for the weakest in our society, to care for our seniors. We have obligations that we've made. But we also need to encourage individual responsibility and not to be encouraging dependency upon government. So that's the balance there that we need to find, that proper balance of the role of government and individual initiative. And I think that the pendulum has swung too far to the side of government is the answer to everything. Government is certainly not the answer to everything, but there are some who actually believe it is, and I believe we're represented by one here, frankly. But I believe we need to bring that pendulum back to the center, where there's a good balance between the proper responsibility of government, but encouraging individual initiative.
And you bring up a very good point about entitlements and beneficiaries of government subsidies, where my wife and I were in Stewart's the other day. By the way, she loves Stewart's coffee and doesn't start her morning without it. Sometimes I don't even bother talking to her. Love you, honey. But she's off camera over here, and one of my biggest supporters, and I thank heaven every day that she's in my life. But we stopped into Stewart's, and we were talking to this couple from here in Schenectady, and they said, that they had neighbors just down the street from them who were getting on government subsidies and getting $38,000 a year, something of that nature, where he's working a full-time job and getting $46,000 or $45,000 a year. So only a few $1,000s more, and he's working a full 40-hour week. And the other person is getting these subsidies and making all that. And are they paying any taxes on it? Probably not. But I'd have to look into that a little bit further. But people aren't seeing the incentive for working anymore when they see their neighbors being able to do whatever they feel that they want to do, and we're basically paying their salary to stay home. Now, does that happen all over the place? Well, we don't know. What are there extenuating circumstances? We're not sure about that either. But I can tell you that after speaking with this person, he seemed like he was very well educated and understood what was going on. What do we do about these folks who are getting these subsidies and don't have to report in for them? I know that who work on a full-time job and do my best to go out and inform the public and let people know what's going on and what's happening with their monies. I have to pay for this kind of stuff, and I basically am out paying these people salary who don't give back into the system, who don't have to pay taxes. And where can we go with those type of things?
Well, I think as you alluded to, it's always important to remember there's individual circumstances to each one of these stories, and some of these people are genuinely in need and deserve our help, and we want people to be able to put food on their plates, to be able to feed their children and provide for their families. But we do not want people, again, being encouraged to do that instead of going out and trying to find a job. But here's the thing, just come back to the economic growth component. We wouldn't even necessarily be having this discussion so much if we had robust economic growth in our country and we were having new jobs being created. If there were plenty of jobs out there for people to get, then I think most people are going to go and be much happier to get that job, even if they're not making a lot more money than they would make on public assistance. But we have to encourage people to be doing that. We have to grow our economy so we give people that opportunity. And we're not going to grow our economy by putting all the emphasis on just building government bureaucracies. Let's just throw money at bureaucracy and throw money at industries that maybe aren't economically viable, like we saw happen with Solyndra and some of these other stories. We need to be if we're going to be investing money as a federal government, I would say we need to put it into infrastructure. I'll tell you, I go around this district and I talk with mayors and county executives and just people in private sector as well. And the story that I hear over and over again is the horrible state of our infrastructure around here.
Yes.
And that, to me, is a proper role for the federal government. We can help to finance the laying of new pipes for upgraded sewer systems, water systems. These are the types of things that we need to have in place in order to allow for private development. Right. And that's what government needs to do. Government doesn't need to be out there building buildings to be able to house more bureaucrats. They need to be doing things like this, which will create the foundation essentially for strong private economic growth.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because it takes me into it's a great segue for one of the things that I want to talk about here in Schenectady, which are our opportunities or missed opportunities, whichever the case might be, about some businesses coming into the area. But before we do that, I want to give you an opportunity to take the stage for a moment, and you can talk to America, talk to the world, talk to Schenectady, and by all means, tell them what you want to say. And I hope you'll stick around afterwards so we can talk a little bit more.
All right, that's great.
Great.
Well, I guess I'd just like to introduce myself to the folks who are watching in on your maiden voyage, and I have to admit that this is also my first time on television. During the campaign, so if I seem a little bit nervous, could be that I am. So Joe and I were talking about at the beginning. We share that a little bit, but anyway, I did grow up here in Schenectady. I'm a native of Schenectady. Went to Niskayuna High, continued on from there to SUNY Cortland, where I got a degree in economics and a minor in American history. After that, I started a career, and my career was in sales. I was doing straight commission sales of copying machines. And that's how I got my start. But what that did for me is it gave me the confidence in later years, when I had an opportunity to start a business, that I would be able to do that, survive, without a paycheck. So 24 and a half years ago, I started a small business, and I continue to operate that business. My wife, Katie, and I have 3 teenage children, and obviously love them very much. I'm very proud of them. My oldest daughter will be graduating from Burn Hills this year. And, I've just, as concerned as so many people are in this direction that our country is going, and that's why I've decided to make this run. I've never run for elected office before. This is the first time, but it just was growing inside of me, this concern for the direction our country is going, and this passion to want to make a difference. I believe that public service is a very noble thing. And so I'm offering myself to the folks of the 20th Congressional District to present another alternative, a new, strong, independent voice to represent the people of the 20th District. So I look forward to engaging with people, and ask people to visit my website, fischerforcongress.com. And the name Fischer is spelled with a C in the middle, Fischer. I always tell people the C stands for change. That's how you remember it. So fischerforcongress.com. Like my Facebook page. Follow me on Twitter, @JimForCongress. Facebook is Jim for Congress. So that's who I am, and you already know what I'm for. So
yes, we do.
Yes.
Jim, I'm so glad you could make it in here for our very first show. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
and I'm glad you're going to stick around with me for a little bit. Now, we were talking about business, and one of the things that City Council has been talking about now, and that I mentioned when I stood up at the rail, was about the casino, and that's one of the big things that's happening right now, and one of the big focuses in the city of Schenectady. They're looking at putting a casino right around the area of what's going to be called the Mohawk Harbor. There were a couple different opportunities that they had over here. One to put a property that they were focusing on over in Maxon Road. But it's my understanding that they recently, I believe yesterday on the 20th, they had a meet and greet and information session for invited members to take a look at some of the plans that they had for the casino and what was going to be done with it. Now, I didn't have much of an opportunity, pardon me, to read the article, but from what I can see, there's a lot of really interesting information about it. But the big question is it good for the area? Now, this the property where they're looking to put this casino in is right in the backyard of East Front Street and the Stockade area here in Schenectady. I've heard people that are really on both sides of the fence on this one. But I think the biggest concern, and the one that's speaking most loudly, is the close proximity of this particular development to the people of the Stockade and the residential areas. is of major concern. There are concerns of crime. There are concerns of bringing an element into the area that we may not necessarily want, or these people who are going to have this right in their backyard. Now, let me go back a little bit, because I want to tell you that I grew up in Saratoga Springs. I know that there was some mention back last year when I was campaigning for city council that I was from another state. And yes, I did live in another state, but I was raised for a good number of years up in Saratoga Springs, from when I was in my early single digits up through high school, and then went back there after I came home from the Air Force. Yes, I am an Air Force veteran. In fact, I was voted in as the new commander of the American Legion post on Upper Union Street. But I'll get into that before we wrap up here in about another 5 minutes or so. And I want to make sure that we say thank you to all our veterans too. But going back to the focus of this casino, I'll ask you, Jim. What have people talked to you about their thoughts on the casino?
Yeah, it's varied, as you can imagine. I'm sure you've heard different perspectives on it as well. And my own perspective, I actually happen to agree with Paul Tonko on this one. It's one of the few things we might agree on during the campaign. Is, it has to be a local decision.
Right.
The district that I would be representing, I think there's 5 different proposed locations within the district. There's Rensselaer, East Greenbush, Exit 23 in Albany, here in Schenectady, and where else? Is that all?
I think, was there one down toward, I know there's one toward Cobleskill Way.
Yeah, that's just outside of the district. But regardless, those,
Right.
So all of those have to be decided on a local basis. Saratoga made the decision. Apparently,
Yes.
The people there spoke loud and clear. We'll see where it goes with the other locations. Personally, I feel that there's better ways to do economic development. I sort of feel that when you encourage gambling, you're encouraging people that we talked about earlier, who maybe don't have a lot of money to spare.
Right.
To take money that they might otherwise use for things that they really do need to, put food on the table, to pay their bills, and, go out and, let me see if I can.
You see,
I can
parlay
turn
this into something
right,
bigger, right?
Right. So,
and we see that, and people, of course, have if they do see someone with a gambling problem, they can contact the New York State Council on Problem Gambling. They were a customer of mine when I was doing computer work out in the field, and we certainly encourage them to reach out to the state. That's a program that they do have. It's readily available, and if you know of somebody that has a problem like that, by all means reach out and find the help that you need. There are lots of programs that are available. I want to just keep moving because we've only got a few more minutes left in the show. One of the things that there are a couple of things coming up at the next city council meeting, and I was thinking about that. I think I had a reverse, didn't I? I think the council committee meetings are the 1st and 3rd, isn't that? Because they just had one on May 19th, so that would have been the 1st and 3rd. And then the city council meetings are on the 2nd and 4th Mondays. And as I mentioned, this next week being Memorial Day, it's going to be on Wednesday. So if you want to speak about anything to the city council, I encourage you to do so. These are your taxpayer dollars. So make sure you get an opportunity to stand up there at the rail. And if you can't make it, contact me, let me know, and I will definitely go up to the rail and speak on your behalf. I'm going to give you my website in here in just a few moments. We've only got a few minutes left, but I want to make sure that we get everything in. One of the big things that we're talking about at the next city council meeting, and that I did notice was going to go on the agenda, is the approval of the audit from last year's report. There's a lot of information in there that I encourage people to download the PDF file, go up to the city's website, and you can download the agenda. Now, be careful because it's over 100 pages. So there's a lot of information in there. So if you sit down with a nice cup of coffee from Stewart's or wherever you might want to get that from, or a dish of ice cream or something like that, but relax and take your time and go over this information. There's a lot of information in there, and you can see for yourself where funds were moved around and vacated, and decide for yourself and inform yourself on if this is a shell game or if things are just being moved around. Now, Jim, do you have any folks that have been in the military yourself, or any
My
relatives?
dad was in World War II in the Pacific,
Okay.
in the Navy, and my uncles. But beyond that, no. I was not in the military. My siblings weren't. So I grew up through the 70s, which was a time of peace. So
Yes,
I was
yes, it was.
fortunate. But, you know, we just came from the Heroes at Home organization that started up, and fantastic group of people. And I was talking with a gentleman who was an Iraq veteran, disabled now. And, you know, I just, with you, just want to honor our veterans and just say, you know, how much I appreciate what you've done for us to give us the freedoms that we have. We can't say thank you enough to our
Absolutely.
veterans.
And the Memorial Day is a day to honor those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice. Let's make sure that if you know of someone, the family of a veteran, that you give them your thanks. And remember those who have paid that sacrifice, not only have paid the ultimate sacrifice, but have paid their dues in wars past and present as well. Make sure you come and visit us over at the American Legion on Upper Union Street. Just about every Saturday morning, you can see my wife Linda and I there helping to serve breakfast. They're only $5 a piece. We've got all kinds of stuff that you can get there. Everything's made to order. Make sure you pay tribute to the Polish American Veterans Club in Schenectady, and we just started an American Legion Riders chapter too.
Really?
At this one over here. In fact, Linda and I got our motorcycle, so you can see us out on the road here and there. There's a lot happening here. Make sure you visit my website. It's jckelleher.com, or you can also go to my site for City Council and get in touch with me. My phone number is going to be up there very soon, but you can write me at joe@kelleherforcouncil.com. By all means, reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Pretty soon, we're going to be having a call-in segment on the show in future shows. We're getting that all underway, but we wanted to get this maiden show underway. I want to thank Jim Fischer for U.S. Congress for being here with us on our very first show. Thank you very much for the people my friends and family who have supported me in getting this all started, and especially my beautiful wife, Linda. Thank you very much. I love you, and I'm glad you're here with me too. The folks at SACC TV, make sure you come back, watch us over here anytime at SACC.tv. I'm Joe Kelleher with Schenectady Online, live from the city of Schenectady.
Thanks for having me. That was fun.
It was a pleasure, yeah. It was,